But to begin, I just want to acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this territory, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We acknowledge their members who reside among us, how much we have to learn from them. We also acknowledge the intertwined legacies of settler colonialism, the transatlantic slave trade, and the trans-Pacific exploitation of Asian workers who contributed to the founding of San Francisco and its wealth and this university. The forum builds on that history and its intersections with that history. So just kind of setting us in that intention at the beginning. So March 8th is International Women's Day, and it was first recognized in the US in 1909 when working class immigrant women marched through the streets of New York to protest the terrible sweatshop conditions and to demand both bread, so money, wages, and roses, recognition for their work. So I think that's kind of what we're thinking about with the Global Feminist Forum. It's the 24th year that USF has been celebrating it, and it's usually just bringing different speakers from all parts of education, scholarship, society together to enlighten us about their fights for equity and equality. So we're really grateful to be a part of that program today. Now let me introduce you to Sonia. Sonia Romero is an LA-based artist known for her paper cut and printmaking aesthetics, which she incorporates both in her fine art and public art commissions. Her paintings, prints, and sculptures can be found in many collections, including the Smithsonian Museum of American Art, the LA County Museum of Art, and the Cheech Marin Museum of Art and Culture. In addition, Romero is an accomplished public artist with over 10 permanent large-scale public projects in Southern California. She's working on one in Utah. Is it okay to say where? Okay, in Seattle, in the Seattle area, and we have 5 examples of the LA projects here. And her aesthetic influences encompass Chicano art, vintage graphics, and LA culture, and the natural world. And then Noopur Agarwal, who some of you are her students, lucky you, is going to be the facilitator, is a practicing visual communication designer and professor of design here at USF. Her practice includes collaborative, interdisciplinary, and exploratory processes and approaches. She maintains an active consultancy practice in addition to her teaching, working with nonprofits, publishing, and technology organizations to examine nuclear disarmament, climate change, and worldwide disparities in sanitation. I love that. We have people. So here we are. Thank you. Join us at 5 for a reception tonight as well. And tomorrow there will be a curator talk, and Karen Rapp is the curator at LMU, the director of their art museum. So this show is coming from LMU, and she's also here to be a resource for us today and tomorrow at noon. There will be a talk. So, take it away. Okay. Do you want to start?
Okay. I had the great pleasure of meeting Sonia yesterday and talking a little bit about her work. And we thought it might be a really great, starting here at the accordion book might be a really great place for us to start. So can I have you all come over here and gather around this piece? And a lot of the students, I'm a professor in the design program, and a lot of the students here are in an intro to web design class, and so you're seeing a lot of analog art making around us, and so you might ask, what does this have to do with web design? And web design, just like printmaking, is all about process. It's just another process for making. And so I really would like us to focus a lot on process and your process of making. And Sonia, you thought this would be a great piece start with, because you made it, I think, right out of your undergrad career, close to where you all are at. And you should know that a lot of the design students actually have done some bookmaking and maybe an accordion book in their first foundation classes. So I'll let you tell us a little bit more about this piece.
Okay, sure. I'll make sure you can come this side if you want to look
Yeah,
at
come
it.
closer.
So yes, I was a printmaking major at my college, RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, but we didn't study lino cut in my program. I actually studied lino cut. I interned with an artist named Artemio Rodriguez in 2003, and while I was working for him for free for a year, he was like, why don't you do a project? And so I decided to do an alphabet from A to Z. I started here, and then like a year later I was here. And by the time I finished, I pretty much felt very comfortable in this medium of lino cut. He used to work on letterpress machines. So this was printed on a Heidelberg. I don't use a letterpress anymore now in my studio. I just use an etching press or a hand print. But to this day, I still use linoleum cut printing. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's basically like carving a piece of linoleum like you would find on the floor, but like without any lacquer on it, just a plain piece of linoleum. And it's like a stamp. So it's a really simple printmaking process that you can do if you don't have access to a whole college of equipment. But this was like pivotal for my everything else you're going to see in like the next 20 years of work, because I brought this technique with me in everything that I do. But yeah, I just thought you guys might want to see this piece first. If you have any questions, I can speak to them. Yeah.
Do you use oil-based ink, or do you use acrylic-based, like water soluble?
I use oil-based ink. Water-soluble ones weren't really as available 20 years ago, I'm always thinking about that though, because I'm using, in my paintings that you're going to see, I combine linoleum cuts, which are printed on paper, with acrylic paint, which is water-based, or sometimes I use oil paint. So I'm always like thinking about these, how am I going to make these materials work together, which is not necessarily something that someone just viewing the art would think about, but that's something I have to think about. This is oil-based. Yeah.
Were all of the pages connected from the start?
No. Okay. So they were printed two on a paper, and then you can see the hinge at the back. They're all I glued them all myself. There's like this is an edition of, let's see, I think it's like 36 or so. And then I also printed all of these letters individually on 6x8 pieces of paper, and I would sell them. And I sold like so many. So when I was just graduating, Etsy just had started, and I used to sell so many letters on Etsy. Now Etsy's horrible, but back then it was awesome. So that was, yeah, that's where we start.
Sonia, can I also, maybe we'll look at stuff in this area for a little bit, but I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what are in the two cases here, because there's some stamps there, right?
Yeah.
And we'll show you a litwill bit of process, and then I'm seeing the connection between the book and what's in this case with your love for children's literature, right?
Yeah, I really grew up with a lot of children's illustration being one of my first inspirations. My mom was a big reader, so she read a lot to me, and I read a lot, and that was one of my influences. So, and I was just really into that kind of nostalgia. Here's some blocks. So these are the actual stamps that I carved out. If you guys can visualize the process, I use a chisel type tool to carve. First I draw on the material. This is speedy cut. It's not linoleum, but it's similar. First I draw on there, and then I carve out everything that's going to remain white, and everything that is left will have the ink rolled onto it. And so after it has the wet ink on it, you can press it onto paper, and that's a handmade stamp. And yeah, these are also kind of earlier orders from 2006. There were 8 of them. of innovation that I did here is instead of doing traditional printmaking techniques to get the color, I actually used acrylic paint and I airbrushed it with a stencil, and then I glued my linoleum cut print on top. You're probably wondering, how does that work? Well, when I was in college, I interned at a Japanese paper store, and I just, through experimenting, I found this paper that disappeared when you varnished it with acrylic medium. And so there's a piece of paper that's glued over the entire color. So and it became transparent. And this, I also was doing a little bit of an innovation here with the background. Instead of using paper, I used plywood, and I did a keyhole in the background, in the back, so it's like easy to hang, because framing is so expensive. And at the time, like the market that I was selling to was, I didn't want to have to ask my clients to pay for framing on top of like the artwork. So I decided to just print on, just to make these artworks on wood. And I'm still doing that. So all, like you'll see over here, like these are all wood instead of paper. I also work with paper, but sometimes framing is an issue. So.
Sonia, what are we seeing in this piece then? This one?
That's the same.
Same.
Yeah, it's the same series.
Yeah. And then the photo of you in your
Oh,
studio.
yeah, there's a photo of me in the studio. I had a studio back then called She Rides the Lion. That was the name of my Etsy store back then. I don't really do She Rides the Lion anymore, but did it for quite a while. And that studio is in Highland Park in Los Angeles. I was there for 7 years.
While we're in this part of the gallery, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about this piece. Did you do that piece with your father?
Yeah, so yeah, this is a collaboration with my father. He's also an artist, lifetime artist. My mom's also a lifetime artist, so I have a whole family of artists. My grandmother was an artist. Yeah, we had a show together in 2007. So half of these images are his and half of them are mine, and then just sort of made him into a quilt because my dad and my mom were really into collecting rugs from like New Mexico and other places, so that sort of made sense for us, our family. And, yeah, so these are mine here, and these ones are his. He's really like well known for like this car and this palm tree. And these were mine. Yeah, that's how we did it. But I actually don't think we worked well together. So, but we did it. Yeah. These three, but this one illustrates what I was doing with the series. So I was treating it like a stage with a character, and then you could put the character on any stage, and you could change the character on any background. So this here is 2 different kinds of paper. The background is a rag paper, standard European printmaking rag paper, and then this is a Japanese paper handmade by a living artist in Japan. And this is cut out to the shape of a figure. And this is the same color ink on both the background and the foreground. But the background is double printed, so that like took half the ink off to make a ghost print. So it's like a lighter application of ink, and then this is the fully inked color. And I had planned this to be a long series, but then I wasn't able to get this paper anymore because the person died who made it. And then I was really sad about that, so I stopped making them. But yeah, that's that series. I had photographed this person at the farmer's market. She's playing jarocho music, which is Mexican style music. I actually knew her randomly from high school, but I just saw her on the street playing. And when I put these two things together, like the picket fence and the jarocho player, it wasn't really my intention, but it became this story of America and like trying to get into and it became an immigration story. So even though you can see I was playing, I was just putting characters onto backgrounds, like people, like viewers of the artwork attached this whole story to it, which was fascinating. And now I'm happy to have that story attached to that, but there you go. Maybe I should do some more of these because that was a really fun experience, and now that I'm talking about it, I wish I did more. And also, like, in the Son Jarocho community, this has been used as a flyer for, like, you know, their events, and it's pretty cool. This series is from 2012. Behind you, this is a totally different technique, but similar. So these are, after doing linoleum cut printing for a long time, I got tired of it, and also it's like very hard on your arm and your shoulder physically because you're really like digging into it. It's like, I still use it, but it's hard on your arm. So I switched to paper cut. Paper cut is just cutting paper. With an X-Acto blade. And I would use like a cardstock, weight paper, so it's a little bit thin. And this is a different series called Inner Landscape. And this, what you're actually looking at, is a silk screen. So it's this, sometimes I display the actual paper cuts in frames, but in order to bring my artwork to more people, I would make them into prints. So these are both editions of 50. So there's 50 of these that exist and that I can sell. I also sold the originals, paper cuts. Like the original, this one is in the Cheech Museum in Riverside. But then I have, you know, as an artist, it's nice to be able to sell it and work at a lower price point to more people if you can, you know, if you have that printmaking ability. So these are silk screens. And that's also able to add the color with the silk screen. Like each one is like 9 layers of color around there, depending on the print. So that process, I paid a silk screen shop to make these for me. I do know how to do silk screen, but it's just like a lot of equipment. So you can, or actually they publish you, so that means they don't have to take their commission. But every time you put a color, it's like you have to put the one color on all 50 sheets of paper. So it's like yellow 50 times, gray 50 times, you know, that's that process. Late 1800s. And it is not to be believed. I don't know if you guys have ever read it, but it's like so massive. And let's say it's like 2 or 3 stories high. And it's the massacre of the American bison, right? Do you guys know about that? No? Oh, sorry. I didn't know he was there. There it is. Okay. There's this little guy here going like, you know. So why did they kill like the entire population of American bison? Do you guys know? Because it was a major food source to Native Americans and also like a cultural, it's very like central to their culture, right? And so not only are they removing their sustenance, but they're also claiming the land because, you know, bison have to roam far without fences in order to maintain their lifestyle. So this, I found like this picture was incredible and really like shows our history in this country. So I started doing bison skull piles, and I also was interested in bees at the time behind you because there was, in the news at that time, there was this thing called colony collapse disorder where entire hives of bees were disappearing and they didn't know why. It's really integral to our food system, like that they bring these hives of bees to pollinate all our trees, like especially here in California. And they didn't know where they were going, and it was a mystery at the time. So I found that fascinating. The first bee pile was called Found 'Em, and it was a pile of dead bees. This one's they're still alive, but that was the bee pile series. I did quite a few of these. And some of these piles are actually, I've made them very large. At the LMU show we had, how tall was that, Karen?
About 12 feet.
It was about 12 feet high. So I would take, so these are all prints on thin paper that I cut out, and then if you work in graphics, I would recommend like trying paper cutting, because you have to figure out how to make islands and have everything attached, but also show what your intention is with the line. So it's a really great exercise for your brain. So yeah, these are the actual paper cuts that I would make. And I actually printed these. Like what I did is I inked a big piece of plexiglass with a roller. So it was a perfect layer of ink, and then I put this paper onto the ink and ran it through the press. And then when I peeled it off, it had a perfect layer of ink on it. And then I took that and I put it on a piece of paper and ran it through the press, and then I had a print of it. So I used this paper as a stamp, but it was like a very delicate process because it's thin. And then I framed the paper, and there you go. I don't have the print here to show you, but that gives you an idea of how, this gives you an idea of how I make these.
And you were talking about linoleum blocking art on your body, but this has also got to be hard.
This is all, I mean, it's not as hard as the paper's thinner. Yeah.
Did you like use something to hold it in place so that it didn't tear while you were cutting it? Or how did it?
No, I like to be able to move it around, because like every time I switch angles, I would have to turn it. But the kind of paper I used was thick enough where it didn't tear. And then you learn control, and then you never, like with linoleum or paper cut, I never accidentally go too far because I'm so used to doing it. Eventually you stop making mistakes. This here is also a paper cut that's been turned into a poster.
Being a mother, about food judgment in culture is everything. So talk about process.
Oh yeah, okay. This is a different series. So now we're into like food politics. This is 2011 series. This is like a junk food man. I had done more, there are more of these, but this was a junk food man. It was talking about food deserts and what foods are available in convenience stores in the city, and just interest. And then like at that time there was this, I had read Michael Pollan. I don't know if you guys have ever read his books, but he was talking about how we're disconnected to farming and in the city, and like we have no idea where food comes from, and organic versus non-organic, and access to food, and those were the topics I was interested in at the time. Yeah, this is breastfeeding, which I don't even know why that's a controversy, but it has been such a big controversy in my lifetime. Whether you're, being judged for breastfeeding, or being judged for not breastfeeding, or being judged for judging people. But this is kind of my so these, but technique-wise, this was a paper cut that I then used to make a stencil. And then this is linoleum cut that I pasted on over. And then, yeah, this whole thing was a linoleum cut, so I carved the whole thing out and then pasted it on there. And also these paintings are embarrassing to me because they are so awful and I hate them. But I know none of you guys think that, but I think that because they're so, like, or when you see work that you've done like so many years ago and you're like, oh my God, my technique has really gone so much further than that, and I can't believe it. But I think they're great examples of where I started on the technique, yeah. Any questions?
And I had to twist your arm.
And yeah, Karen really twisted my arm trying to put this in this show, which this show, I don't know if you know this, but this show originated at Loyola Marymount University in 2023. And so it's a traveling show, so it's a second subject.
Thanks for sharing that. We are very impressed by it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason why I think it might be valuable to say that is I'm trying to figure out how to mix stenciling, linoleum cut, and painting. I actually can paint very realistically, but when I'm trying to figure out how to combine all those three things, I'm like playing with flatness, playing with like how much dimension do I want to add, and so I hadn't quite got all of that to flow yet at this point. And so in your lifelong lives, you're going to have this whole process of, maybe having a goal and then all your steps to get to it. And then if you're an artist, it's just always out there for people to see, which is fine. 2023. And this is a pile of Junipero Serra statues that have been decommissioned. I don't know if you guys know about that. Does anyone know about that? So this is a California character of our history. Like he's responsible for creating the missions that go up and down California, and was recently made into a saint, right? But he is also known for massacring the First Nation people that were here, and being very cruel and enslaving them. So he has two different narratives in California, and people have been working to remove his statue, and it's called decommissioning. You remove it. And then there's this idea of where do we put it after we take it down? Put it in a closet, or do we destroy it? So I imagined a new sculpture made of all the toppled statues, and this is my imagining of it. The background is the LA River. And all of the graffiti that's on these, I took from the news. So these are the actual decommissioned statues that I saw in the news that I collected here. This is a silk screen. But process, I made it as a linoleum cut, took all my linoleum cuts of the statue, put it in the computer, made it into a pile to do this final composition, and then it was printed layer by layer each color. And this is an edition of 50.
So for clarity's sake, so did you create each statue separately and then pile them? Or
Yes.
This is one, okay.
I created each statue separately as a stamp, like I showed you in the case, printed it, scanned the print into the computer, cut it out in the computer, and made the composition in the computer. This background is inspired by the Revolving Landscape series. Same technique where I'm making like a stage, same kind of horizontal stripe of mark making.
Sonia, I want to thank you to all, thank you for also saying how the computer is part of your process. So I definitely want you, especially the students who are designers, that you don't have to just always be on the computer. You can go back and forth between your analog and digital tools.
Yeah, so in 20 years ago, I wasn't using the computer. Now I use the computer all the time. I use my iPad to draw. A lot of my newer works I've been drawing on the iPad. I was just telling Karen that maybe I should start drawing on paper again. It's been years since I've drawn on paper, and I kind of miss it. But I also spend a lot of time painting by hand, cutting by hand, carving by hand. So I do both. Yeah.
Are there any questions on the piles in this folder? Yeah.
Is that all the same color ink as well, like in the other series?
I can't remember. I feel like there's like 9 different colors of ink on this one. So it's not the same. Yeah. But they're all the same similar shades. Yeah. And I kind of, was trying to keep that similar feeling. I like this color.
How long does it take you to pick your color palette? Like for the bees, you can see like the different kind of like faded shades and all that sort of stuff, and then like the more bold, and then same with this, like you see all of this to make it cohesive. How long do you take you to do that?
I just kind of work on instinct. That wasn't that long. Yeah.
I think there's a question. There's a question, yeah.
For the backgrounds of these ones, like this one looks more hand painted, the background, or that one looks more printed. Do you like?
That one is hand-painted, and that one is printed.
Good idea.
These are made in my studio, and this is made in this one.
And how much time went into
Okay.
this? Because oftentimes as designers, we work in the immediate. And then also scale. A lot of us were struggling in our first project about the browser window not being the size we wanted to be. So, but we have to talk about the public art. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so thank you guys for listening to me about my fine art. I also have a whole other career in public art, which means that I'm creating work for public spaces, like libraries, metro stations, bus stations, city streets. And the way that I get these projects is by applying to city programs, and then it's a competitive process, and then I have to win them, and then I get the commissions. And they're funded by like either metro or county or city, that's where the money comes from. And your client is the city. So it's this whole other process where you're thinking, like, I need to thoughtfully create something that takes into consideration the historic and present communities that live in this space. I'll just talk about this one because there's a few examples, but we'll just work on this one. So this is Mariachi Plaza in Boyle Heights in Los Angeles, which is a historically, mostly Mexican neighborhood. And it's right next to downtown LA. And it's where this is the metro station here. So it's underground, but above there's Mariachi Plaza, which is where you go and pick up your mariachi bands for when you want them for your party. You can go higher than there. So it's a historical neighborhood for that. And this is my second metro station that I did. The first one is over here after you can look at it. And so my concept for this piece was people from the neighborhoods, portraits of their hands, holding objects of significance that they felt represented the neighborhood or themselves as residents of the neighborhood. So it's a little bit collaborative because it's my concept, but I'm allowing them to bring items that they think would be representative of their community. And then I picked what I felt would be the best narrative. So I did like 300 photos, and then I picked this many to create a narrative for the mural. So here's some examples of the photo shoots that I did. I did like 3 or 4 photo shoots where I asked people to pose holding things. And I did this publicly, like in the plaza, and also by going to institutions like Sonia Graphics, which is a community center, and asking them to bring people in for me specifically. Like there were more targeted outreach situations, and then there were just random people walking by situations. That's how I did so from all of these public projects, there is a public outreach component where I'm learning directly from people who live in the neighborhood. So process 1 is photographing. Yeah. Then I did a drawing of all of the things I wanted to pick, just like you see on the computer, and I made a composition. I had this idea. So my dad, who we talked about over there, he's a Chicano artist, famous for the 1970s painterly mural style, right? That's his era. So I wanted to honor that era, the Chicano mural painting era, by adding some painterly elements in the hands. But then I wanted to kind of bring it into my era by adding this really graphic style, which is what I'm into, paper cut style. So my concept was like, when I'm pitching this to the judges, is like I'm honoring Chicano history, but also bringing it into the contemporary of my era. And they liked it, and I won the commission. And I was going up against like 4 other artists, right? Then I had to make, so I drew the composition, then I made all the paper cuts by hand. Here's an example. I cut and then I had to wait like 4 years for them to give me this aluminum panel because Metro takes forever. They made these humongous aluminum panels. Each one is 12 feet high, or like this. There's 9 of them, like 9 by 12. Each one weighs 300 pounds. I painted this in my studio, so I had to hire a crew of men to switch them out for me. Like, so 9.
There's a picture of it.
I have a picture. Okay. 9. Here's me in my studio. So 5 to 9 men each time would come over and like switch them out for me. I could only put 2 at a time in my studio. My studio's not that big. And so the whole mural's hand painted, which is great because usually Metro doesn't allow you to do that. But this one's 10 feet off the ground, so you can't graffiti it. And it's inside with like video cameras, so there's no rain or sun or anything like that. And then scanned these into the computer and blew it up to the size of the mural and traced it onto the mural, so it's like exact. And then just hand painted the whole mural. And I mostly painted it myself. I had one assistant occasionally, but I mostly just, it took me a year to paint this. The whole project took 5 years. This is my daughter. So when I wanted to finish it, she was a newborn, and by the time it was finished, she was 5. And I had had a second child by the time it was finished. So that was like wrapped up in this whole process, you know, being a new mom. And these are my family members here. So my family's from this neighborhood. I'm not from Loyola Heights, but my grandparents lived in Loyola Heights, and my dad was raised in Loyola Heights. So I added a little bit of family history in there. And yeah, any questions on this project?
I want to make one comment. So I'm Karen, and really always feeling like it's a privilege in the role that I play to work with an artist and to really be able to imagine a show like this. But as designers, and like Diego, who did such a beautiful job with all of the materials related to Sonia's show, I just want to talk about for one moment the magic that I see that artists have. And I mean that literally, because in getting to know Sonia's process and hearing about her open call, this is like the equivalent of the Mission District here in the Bay Area, the Loyal Heights area in Los Angeles, and just saying, Sonia, I can't believe you did all these things, where she's meeting community members who bring the object, taking the photo. She hired a professional photographer to take the photo, then taking that object, bringing it into the computer, then from the computer bringing it back into the material world. Then she said she brings that into the computer to scale up, and then hand painting it. Like, that's magic. I would never be able to see that process that she has, like how she envisions it, and that's her visual language. And I work with people like you, Diego, at my campus, and I always want to encourage all of you to like embrace that language that makes your work yours. You know, this is Sonia, and when I now was getting a refresh because I haven't seen the work in over a year, I'm like, yep, that's how she does it. She solves these.
And make it as hard as possible.
Make it complicated, but it's just, you know, it's like that's what makes the work great, and that's what gives it the human element beyond, you know, the visual. It's this language. So I just wanted to share that part.
Oh, and then this is a stencil that I would use to put these butterflies on, so I would just trace it, so I didn't have to like hand draw each one. I had a laser cut out of plexiglass as like a stencil.
Any other questions? This is your chance.
Almost out of time.
And some other projects that you can look at, this is Little Tokyo in downtown LA. These were neighborhood markers. There's 40 of them that go through the street, so like when you're driving through or walking through, you know where you are. Paid for by the Community Redevelopment Agency.
And if you watch shows that are filmed in LA, you'll see these now and go, oh yeah, I recognize that Sonia's work. Anybody from LA here?
What neighborhood is it from? Okay, I haven't done anything over there. There's so many neighborhoods in LA. There's like, even though I've done like 15 different neighborhoods, I could never hit all of them.
I've been to that station.
Oh,
Because I take that show from East LA.
have you seen this? Or?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
I've seen a lot of your work in that one as well. Like I
Which one?
the pool.
Oh, the pool.
Yeah, and the wall.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so the one over there is a swimming pool that I did, a county swimming pool, and then the one over here is a wall in El Sereno, which is like a traffic commission. Like the money came from making the street safer for traffic. And the one here is another metro station, so you guys can look at those at your leisure. And I'll just stand here and if
Yeah,
you have
take a few
questions,
more
come up
minutes
to me.
to look
Yeah.
at it. Can we